The most dangerous thing about smoking is not what it does to your lungs. It's what it quietly steals from your brain before you even notice it happening. Because long before a cigarette causes cancer, it changes blood flow, stress chemistry, memory, sleep, hormones, hunger, focus, and even the speed at which your body ages. And most people never connect the exhaustion they feel at 42, the brain fog at 51, or the constant anxiety at 33, back to the thing they thought was helping them relax. Doctors have warned people about smoking for decades, but what many experts now talk about more quietly is how smoking slowly teaches the body to survive instead of truly live. Your cells stop repairing properly. Your blood carries less oxygen. Tiny vessels feeding your eyes, heart, skin, and brain begin tightening every single day. And the scary part is, a lot of this damage starts years before symptoms appear. That's why some smokers say they suddenly aged overnight. One day, the stairs feel heavier, sleep becomes lighter, stress hits harder. The mirror looks different. Names become harder to remember. Energy disappears faster than it should. And what research has discovered about nicotine, circulation, inflammation, and the aging brain may completely change the way you see smoking forever. Because the real damage is not always the cough. Sometimes, it's the slow disappearance of the strongest version of yourself. 1. The lie smokers believe about stress relief. The cigarette is not calming you down. It is calming the stress the cigarette created in the first place. That is the trap most smokers never fully see. Nicotine changes the brain's reward system faster than most people realize. For a short moment, dopamine rises. The body feels relief. The chest loosens. The mind becomes quieter. But here's what doctors and addiction researchers discovered years ago. The brain quickly adapts to nicotine, then begins creating tension when it's missing. That stress smokers feel before the next cigarette is often withdrawal beginning, not real relaxation disappearing. So the cigarette feels like the solution, when in reality, it quietly became the cause. You can see this pattern everywhere. A person wakes up tired, reaches for a cigarette, feels normal again. Stress at work rises. Another cigarette. Anxiety after lunch. Another one. By evening, they believe smoking helped them survive the day. But their nervous system spent the entire day trapped in a cycle of chemical relief and chemical discomfort. And over time, the brain starts forgetting how to calm itself naturally. Pause for a second and think about that. Real calm usually leaves the body stronger afterward. Smoking often leaves the body more dependent, more inflamed, and more exhausted the next day. Doctors now understand that nicotine affects cortisol, adrenaline, heart rate, blood pressure, and sleep quality far more than most people think. Even smokers who fall asleep easily often wake up with more stress chemicals circulating through the body during the night. That is why many long-term smokers say they constantly feel on edge without understanding why. A few simple changes can begin breaking this cycle. Delay the first cigarette of the day, take slow walks after stress instead of smoking immediately. Drink water before nicotine. Let the nervous system experience small moments of calm without chemical assistance, because the brain relearns safety through repetition. The biggest mistake people make is believing dependence and relief are the same thing. They are not. Have you ever noticed that the thing you thought was helping your stress was actually keeping your body trapped inside it? And what smoking quietly does to oxygen and memory inside the brain may be even more disturbing. 2. How smoking quietly starves your brain of oxygen. Most smokers think the damage stays in the lungs, but some of the most frightening effects happen inside the brain first. Because the human brain is extremely sensitive to oxygen, and smoking slowly interferes with that supply every single day. Every puff introduces carbon monoxide into the bloodstream. That gas competes with oxygen and reduces how much fresh oxygen reaches the brain. At the same time, nicotine tightens blood vessels, making circulation less efficient. The result is subtle at first. Slower thinking, mental fatigue, brain fog people blame on age, stress, or poor sleep. But neurologists and vascular experts now understand that reduced circulation changes how the brain performs long before major disease appears. The brain starts operating in survival mode instead of peak mode, and this is where many people get confused. A smoker may feel temporarily alert after nicotine because dopamine and adrenaline rise for a short period. But underneath that stimulation, oxygen delivery is becoming less stable. It's like pressing harder on the gas pedal while the engine quietly loses airflow. The person thinks they are functioning normally, until one day they notice names becoming harder to remember, focus drifting during conversations, motivation dropping, mental sharpness fading earlier than expected, and because the decline happens slowly, most people never connect the dots. Take two people in their 40s. One wakes up mentally clear, exercises, breathes deeply, and supports circulation daily. The other wakes up reaching for nicotine before water. Their heart rate spikes immediately, blood vessels tighten before breakfast. By afternoon, the second person feels drained and reaches for another cigarette, thinking they need energy. But the body is not asking for energy. It is asking for oxygen. Sit with that for a moment. Some studies now link long-term smoking to faster cognitive decline, increased stroke risk, and changes in memory processing later in life. Not because the brain suddenly fails, but because tiny circulation problems build silently for years. The good news is the brain can respond surprisingly fast when oxygen flow improves. Walking daily helps circulation. Deep breathing supports oxygen exchange. Hydration matters more than people think. And reducing nicotine exposure allows blood vessels to relax and recover over time. One mistake many people make is waiting for severe symptoms before taking brain health seriously. By then, the body has often been whispering warnings for years. Have you ever experienced brain fog, forgetfulness, or mental exhaustion and assumed it was just getting older? Because what smoking does to aging, skin, hormones, and physical recovery becomes even harder to ignore once the mirror starts showing the damage too. 3. Why smokers often age faster than they realize. Smoking does not just age your lungs, it changes the way your entire body repairs itself. And that is why many people do not notice the damage until one day they suddenly feel older than they should. The real vulnerability is not nicotine alone, it is the belief that aging only happens on the outside while the body is quietly slowing down on the inside first. Every cigarette increases oxidative stress inside the body. That means cells experience more damage and less recovery at the same time. Blood vessels tighten, collagen production drops, inflammation rises, oxygen delivery becomes weaker, and over time, the body starts spending more energy surviving damage than rebuilding strength. This is where the confusion begins. Many smokers still feel fine for years, so the brain assumes the body is handling it well. But the human body is incredibly adaptive. It compensates quietly before symptoms finally appear. That is why aging linked to smoking often feels sudden instead of gradual. One day the skin looks duller. Recovery after sleep feels weaker. Stress tolerance drops faster. Joints feel stiffer in the morning. Energy crashes earlier in the day. Workouts become harder to recover from. The face starts carrying more fatigue even after rest, and most people blame age alone. But researchers studying smoking and accelerated aging now understand that reduced circulation and chronic inflammation affect almost every visible and invisible system in the body. Skin cells repair slower. Hormonal balance becomes less stable. Even the tiny blood vessels that nourish hair follicles and facial tissue receive less oxygen over time. That changes how a person looks. But more importantly, it changes how they feel. And the emotional side of this matters more than people realize. When the body feels older, people often stop trusting themselves physically. Motivation drops. Confidence changes. They avoid mirrors, avoid movement, avoid health checkups. The brain slowly adjusts its self-image downward without fully realizing it. That is the hidden psychological effect. The body becomes weaker first. Then the identity follows. You may have noticed this already in subtle ways. Feeling drained after simple tasks. Looking more tired than expected in photos. Feeling mentally older after stressful weeks. Needing more caffeine, more nicotine, more stimulation just to feel normal again. That is not simply life catching up. Sometimes it is the body struggling to keep up with years of reduced repair. Take a slow breath and think about that. The encouraging part is that the body also responds quickly when damage slows down. Doctors often see improvements in circulation, skin tone, breathing, and energy within months after smoking reduction or cessation. The body wants to recover. It is constantly trying to heal even after years of stress. Simple habits begin supporting that recovery immediately. Hydration improves circulation. Walking improves oxygen delivery. Deep sleep supports collagen repair. Protein and nutrient-rich foods help tissue recovery. Reducing smoking frequency gives blood vessels more opportunities to relax and function normally again. Small changes matter more than dramatic promises. One major mistake people make is waiting until they look unhealthy before caring about what is happening internally. By then, the body has usually been under pressure for much longer than they realized. Have you ever looked in the mirror and felt more exhausted than your actual age should feel? Because what smoking quietly does to the heart and blood vessels may explain why the body begins slowing down long before serious symptoms appear. 4. The silent damage happening inside the heart and blood vessels. Most heart damage from smoking does not begin with pain, it begins with silence. That is what makes it dangerous. The human body is vulnerable to slow damage it cannot immediately feel, and smoking takes advantage of that weakness by damaging circulation little by little while convincing people everything is still under control. Every cigarette causes blood vessels to tighten temporarily. Heart rate rises, blood pressure increases, oxygen delivery becomes less efficient. Over time, the inner lining of blood vessels becomes irritated and inflamed. Doctors call this endothelial damage. Most people simply call it aging, but the two are not always the same thing. This is where human psychology becomes part of the problem. People trust symptoms more than patterns. If there is no chest pain, no collapse, no emergency, they assume the body is fine. That belief has quietly fooled millions of people because the heart usually whispers before it screams, and modern habits make this worse. Poor sleep, chronic stress, sitting too long, processed food, constant stimulation. Then smoking gets layered on top of an already exhausted nervous system. The body adapts for years until one day climbing stairs feels strangely harder. Recovery takes longer. Energy disappears faster. The heart works harder doing ordinary things. Not because the body suddenly failed. Because the warning signs were ignored repeatedly. That is the uncomfortable truth many people avoid. Some people spend more time upgrading their phones than protecting the organ keeping them alive. They monitor battery percentage daily, but ignore blood pressure for years. They panic when internet speed drops but normalize exhaustion, poor circulation, cold hands, shortness of breath, and constant fatigue. At some point, people have to wake up. Health is not maintained by luck. It is maintained by patterns repeated daily, and smoking quietly punishes those patterns over time. Researchers have consistently linked smoking to higher risks of heart disease, stroke, narrowed arteries, and circulation problems because nicotine and toxic chemicals place continuous stress on the cardiovascular system. Even younger adults can experience reduced vascular flexibility years before major symptoms appear. That is why some smokers feel older physically long before they look older externally. Pause there for a second. The encouraging part is that blood vessels can begin recovering when smoking stops or reduces, circulation improves. Blood pressure may stabilize, oxygen levels improve. The body starts redirecting energy back toward repair instead of constant defense. Simple actions matter more than people think. Walk daily to improve circulation, prioritize deep sleep, hydrate consistently, learn stress regulation without nicotine. Get regular health checkups even if you feel fine. The earlier people respond to small warning signs, the more the body can recover. One major mistake is believing youth automatically protects the heart. It does not. Damage often begins silently, years before visible disease appears. What is one small warning sign your body has been giving you lately that you may have ignored? And what happens after smoking stops may surprise you even more, because many people have no idea how quickly the body begins fighting to heal itself once the damage finally slows down. Stay to the end, because the recovery timeline doctors rarely explain properly could completely change the way you see the human body. 5. What happens to the body after you finally stop smoking? The human body starts fighting to heal faster than most smokers believe, but many people never experience that recovery because they assume the damage is already permanent. That belief keeps people trapped longer than nicotine sometimes does. Doctors have known for years that the body begins adjusting within hours after smoking stops. Heart rate starts stabilizing. Carbon monoxide levels begin dropping. Oxygen circulation improves. Over time, blood vessels relax. Inflammation decreases and lung function can improve gradually, depending on age and smoking history. The body does not want to stay broken. It wants to recover. But psychologically, many people expect instant results. When stress, cravings, irritability, or fatigue appear early during recovery, they assume quitting is making things worse. In reality, the nervous system is learning how to regulate itself again without constant nicotine stimulation. That discomfort is often healing in progress, and slowly, people begin noticing small changes. Breathing feels lighter, sleep becomes deeper, food tastes stronger, energy feels more stable, morning fatigue improves. The mind feels clearer without the constant cycle of withdrawal and relief. Pause for a second and remember this. The body is incredibly forgiving when given the chance. Start with simple actions, reduce triggers around smoking. Walk daily to support circulation and stress recovery. Drink more water, sleep consistently, ask for medical support if needed. Recovery works better with structure, not shame. The biggest mistake people make is believing they have already gone too far to improve their health. Many improvements begin the moment damage finally slows down. What is one thing your body might thank you for 5 years from now if you started changing today? And once people truly understand how the body heals, they begin seeing health less as punishment and more as an upgrade. Here's the uncomfortable truth most people avoid hearing. Smoking does not only damage the body, it slowly teaches people to ignore their body's warning signs and call it normal. That may be the most dangerous part of all. Because real health is not just surviving year after year. It is waking up with clear energy, stable focus, strong circulation, deep sleep, and a body that still feels alive decades later. If any part of this video connected with your experience, share it in the comments. I genuinely read them, and I'll personally reach out to some of you because conversations like this matter more than people think. And if this helped you see your health differently, like the video, subscribe to The Human Upgrade, and stay with us for the next episode, where we uncover the silent daily habits that age the brain faster than smoking itself.